This talk is a brief talk about why the Buddha rejected Vedanta. And it's a response to something I saw on YouTube that was good, but I think it didn't mention some of the really main reasons. And so we'll go into that. Basically what the video I saw said is probably what you all know. And that's that the Buddha rejected the doctrine of a soul, an eternal self, and a creator. And this only reflects part of the story. First of all, what was the real reason, we'll get into right now, is that the real reason hinges on language, believe it or not, and the authority of the Vedas themselves. And Vedantists, which is a kind of the elite Hindu school of thought, which is really fantastic, and it's something I really don't know much about, the difference between. I've read the entire Vedanta scriptures several times. And I want to point out right at the beginning here, this is not a criticism at all of Vedanta. In fact, Jeffrey Hopkins' doctorate thesis, Meditations on Emptiness, which was published by, I believe, Shambhala Snowlion, a major work. And Jeffrey Hopkins was the Dalai Lama's translator for about 15 years. And he got a PhD in Virginia University, so University of Virginia. So he's a very bright guy, one of the brightest lights in Buddhism today. If you look at the section on his PhD thesis, Meditations on Emptiness, there's a section on Vedanta. In it, he remarks, when it comes to the very highest, most elite cream of Vedanta philosophy, I cannot distinguish it from Madhyamaka, highest Buddhist philosophy. So there you have it. You know, if somebody that's smart cannot know the difference, not saying that there isn't one, just because he cannot find it, but certainly I cannot, you know. So it's not a criticism. I'm not criticizing Vedanta at all. But I just want to point out what I know, why the Buddha rejected Vedanta. And I'm just going to give you a couple of reasons that come to mind immediately. One is, and the most important, is language. The Vedas declare that the script itself was unauthored. The Vedas were unauthored. The script was before God, before any soul, before eternity or anything else. Before creation, there was a script. And that script was what the Vedas arose out of. It is based on this script, basically Sanskrit, an early version of it. I think it's called Lanta or something like that. Anyway, this script pre-existed anything. And therefore, since the Vedas were the first thing that came out of this script, unauthored, eternally existing before creation, that's the authority that the Vedas rest on. And so, you know, the deck is stacked here against anybody else that says anything. So the Buddhists, you know, question this. Say, wait a second here. Can it really be? So, is there any chance of bias here? I mean, the script was before creation. pre-existed God or creator or anything? Was a script, and the Vedas came out of that script? So the Buddha rejected this. And much of what came out of that script is, of course, rejected as well. Amongst other things, the caste system. In the Buddha's assembly, untouchables were welcome. They sat next to ministers and kings. It didn't matter whether you were the priestly caste or the warrior caste, the cobbler caste, the copper workers class, the toilet sweepers class, the Sudas or whatever they're called, Sudas and Chandas. It didn't matter. You sat wherever you sat in the Buddha's assembly. The Buddha had no class consciousness at all. So, then it comes to the idea of a soul. Well, people, Buddhists and non-Buddhists, they talk about soul. One says that there is a soul, one says that there isn't. But what are we talking about? What was it that the Buddha actually rejected? What he rejected was the concept of soul as presented by the Vedas, which means a eternally existing, unchanging entity that is at the heart of each individual. And the Buddha questioned this. And of course, the reply is that, well, the Vedas say so. And the Vedas script existed always. And so the Buddha says, well, logically, though, how can you say that there's an eternally existing, unchanging self? And that this eternally existing, unchanging self came out of this supreme creator, a manifestation of some supreme deity, call him Brahma, whatever. So the question arises, well, if the deity that created the whole world is himself eternal and unchanging, how can he create anything? Change is, if you don't change, you cannot create. Change entails creation. And creation entails change. They pervade each other. So, if this deity is eternal and unchanging, what moves this deity to create anything? And even assuming that such a deity exists and is eternal and unchanging, how can it be known? How can a temporal being like myself know that there's an eternally existing being, since this one here is temporal? It cannot be known. So, how can it be? Are we just dreaming it? Now, arguments are given, well, the deity, the whole creation is a play of the deity. And the deity authors the play and acts in it. Some say it's like a dream of the Creator. And it just enjoys it. Is this possible? Is it logical? They say it's like an actor who just puts on different clothes but remains the same inside. And doesn't change. any more than an actor does that's playing in a play. This is the argument. Does it make sense? I don't know. It's a question I ask myself. Does it make sense? Buddhists say it doesn't make sense because the nature isn't so. That's what they say. So what is the nature? When we talk about nature or creator, as soon as you ascribe a quality to it, that's where you get into trouble. So, if we say the nature is eternal, that's where we have a problem. So, how can this mind that's studying Buddhism grasp anything that's eternal? Because the mind that's trying to grasp it is itself temporal. We're time-bound. So Buddhism says that, well, whether there's a soul or not really doesn't matter. But the idea of something eternally existing, unchanging, does matter. And so why ascribe any quality to what is, in essence, qualityless? So they say, well, what do you need this eternal entity or even a creator for? These are concepts created by our ordinary mind. We go searching, we want to believe in something, so we create whatever we want to believe in because we don't penetrate ourselves. So the Buddha and other Buddhists, and I'm sure Hindus too, that have penetrated the essence of the nature of the mind, they probably reached the exact same conclusion and saw that, ideas such as eternal, everlasting, soul, just get in the way. They're helpful for a while, to get you to think for yourself. But only to the point where you just give up and say, well, nothing I'm coming up with really makes any sense whatsoever. So I'm just going to give up putting any is or is not on anything. And when you reach that point, you're vulnerable for a revelation. And what form that takes, who knows? Maybe you'll be a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian, doesn't matter. As long as you help people and do good things and don't hurt anyone. So, basically, getting back to the video I saw, why the Buddha rejected Vedanta. He probably didn't reject Vedanta. He rejected what it was made into. A caste system with a hierarchy with the priests at the top and everyone else at the bottom. And he rejected that. He rejected horse sacrifice as something that is eternally mandated. He rejected a language that existed anything but conventionally as a means of communication that was developed by people that wished to communicate with each other and share ideas, which has evolved over time and which there's plenty of evidence of. He rejected the fact that the most sophisticated language in the world And that's not just the Indians that are saying it. Germans, Greeks, you name it, Italians, Romans, everybody says when it comes to language, Sanskrit is the perfect language. And no wonder the script itself is called Devanagari, language of the gods. And it's really true. You can say things in Sanskrit in one sentence that would take a whole chapter to describe in English, because we do not have the words they do. For the word consciousness, they have 50 different words to describe various kinds of consciousness, levels and modes of consciousness. So the Buddha said this is conventional. This was developed by very, very smart people that wanted to communicate very profound insights that they had. And there's no denying that. Hinduism produced some of the greatest minds ever. And the Buddha was really refuting how these great minds were interpreted by a priestly caste that selfishly wanted to manipulate divine insights to suit their own means. And so this is how so much evolved. Can you imagine, in your furthest imagination, a caste system created by a rishi with profound insight? Can you imagine a rishi rejecting a toilet sweeper coming to him for instructions, or favoring a warrior caste, Kshatriya, or a Brahmin priest? Would he favor one over the other if he was truly enlightened? You can look at modern day rishis and get your own answer. For example, Ramana Maharshi. His assembly was like the Buddha's assembly. Everybody was equal. And so, when we ask, why the Buddha rejected Vedanta, it's because of all the distortions that were created by an elite class to suit their own means. What the Buddha actually taught was not so distinct from what the rishis taught. And if you can find a difference, you're smarter than Jeffrey Hopkins and a lot of other Buddhists in this world. So when you talk about a soul, and you say, well, I don't believe in a soul, or I don't believe in a creator. Well, what are you really talking about? What are you talking about? What do you mean? Do you know anything about it? How can your mind know what a soul is? Have you experienced it? So, as a person much smarter than myself once said to me when I was saying, I believe this or that, he looked me in the eye and he says, be very careful of that word belief. I never forgot that advice. It's one of the most important things ever said to me. And it was said by a fellow named Jack Affleck, who was kind of a Zen meditator in San Francisco that had a satori one day. And after his satori, he got in a 15-foot sailboat and sailed off to Hawaii with his girlfriend, Susie. And I was on the side of the road one day trying to figure out why my motorcycle wouldn't start. And I was fiddling around with him, and he stopped, and he said, "What's wrong with the motorcycle?" I said, "I don't know." And he stuck his fingers in there, and he had it going in no time. So I followed him to his place, and I sat down with him for a little while. And I was a very naive hippie, and I sat there with him, and I was talking about Dharma and my views. And he said to me, "Be very careful of that word belief." So look at what you believe. And don't believe it just because the Buddha said there's no soul. And don't believe there is one because the rishis say there is. But know it for yourself. See what makes sense. Examine it. Examine your own idea. Then you can't go wrong. And be really sincere. And know for yourself. Because otherwise, saying you believe this or you believe that doesn't mean anything at all. As Jack Affleck told me. So, if you try and find differences between religions, it's a very good thing to do, as long as you don't take a position one way or the other, and you're open-minded. And you say to yourself, okay, why do I believe this? Why am I siding with the Buddhist? You better understand the other doctrine, because that's what made Buddhism so great. The battles that went on between the two of them evolved both of them over time. So the richness of either tradition, whether you're Hindu or Buddhist, comes out of both of them equally, like mother and father. They cannot be separated, the two traditions. And whichever way you go and whoever you follow, know what you're siding with and why you're there, why you're going this way or believing that way. Because it's a lazy man's game to just say, I believe in God. If you want to honor God, know Him, find Him in yourself. I'll tell you one thing. God doesn't care if you're Buddhist or Hindu. Those on the planet who have found the truth within themselves, they don't know either. If you're a seeker, that's all that counts. So, as the Greek said, know thyself. That's it. No more to it than that. Okay. Happy Sunday. End of video here.